Where is Tulsi Gabbard in all this? Where is the, once delightful, conscience person who served in the military that called out the military industrial complex, went on to Joe Rogan, informed me about how corrupted the system is, how corrosive regime change wars are, got me to really be inspired uh, to consider her a viable candidate for presidency when she ran in 2020. She was delightful. She was, I used coined the phrase back in the day. She was like a political crush. Like she was just it was so liberating to hear someone with that poise, with that demeanor to talk about, the regime change failures that the United States has committed and how we got to stop doing that. Well, you remember, as Michael Dracy points out, this was back in 2019, February 2019, when she was campaigning. And this is what Tulsi Gabbard used to say. This is what made her the rising star. This is what made her such a popular figure. And she called out the Trump administration in the pursuit of regime change in Venezuela and Iran. And ironically, those are the two countries that Donald Trump today is currently pursuing. So here is 2019 Tulsi Gabbard when she wasn't in Trump's dominion. And she called out the regime change wars and called out Trump for being complicit with the neocons. Listen to this.
Now, President Trump campaigned against regime change wars when he ran for president. But now he bows to the wishes of the neocons who surround him, clamoring for regime change wars that he claimed to oppose, this time in Venezuela and in Iran. These powerful politicians dishonor the sacrifices made by every one of my brothers and sisters in uniform, their families, as they are the ones who pay the price for these wars. In fact, every American pays the price for these wars that have cost us trillions of dollars since 9/11. Every dollar that we spend on regime change wars or on the new Cold War and this nuclear arms race is a dollar coming out of our pockets. Dollars that should be used to address the very real urgent needs of our people and our communities right here at home.
Wow. That sounds like MAGA. That sounds like socialism right there. That's something that the American public would be voting for, right? That's what Trump was gonna do, right? The Mr. Populist guy who goes on stage, I'm your voice, I'm your guy. I'm not the deep state. I'm gonna go after people like Hillary Clinton. Oh, right. Now how do you feel? Now how do you feel? That was Tulsi Gabbard, 2019. That's when she was a rising star. That's when everybody was excited for her. Just like everyone was excited for Bernie. And then he tucked his tail in when Joe Biden and Barack Obama gave the phone call and said, you are going to do what we are demanding you to do. Or we're going to reveal some information about your wife and the scandal within the college. I think that was the big, giant ball. And turns out Bernie Sanders was a big giant cuck. And a lot of these people are. And you would never think that Tulsi Gabbard would become that person. Tulsi Gabbard seemed like someone who was very focused and determined on things. So, like, even with this, it's January 24th, 2019. The United States needs to stay out of Venezuela. Let the Venezuelan people determine their future. We don't want other countries to choose our leaders. So we have to stop trying to choose theirs. Very conscious tweet. Very uplifting. Very, very popular sentiment. With a lot of the base. A lot of the mega base. Although there is some mega voters that just believe that the wars were not efficient enough. That's what they complain about. It's not the fact that we're doing or not doing regime change wars. It's the fact that we're not doing them quick and swift enough. But that was Tulsi Gabbard back in the day. Here's even just a couple months ago when when Tulsi Gabbard was in the Trump's administration as the DNI secretary, as the director of national intelligence. Here's her making a speech. This was on, I believe, Halloween. And once again, trying to sell this argument that no, Trump is going to be very different. Trump is very different. Even though you called him out in 2019 and saying that he's surrounding himself with neocons and warhawks, here you are on stage, now being the director of national intelligence for the Trump administration, trying to sell this argument that he's still somehow different.
The old Washington way of thinking is something we hope is in the rearview mirror and something that has held us back for too long. For decades, our foreign policy has been trapped in a counterproductive and endless cycle of regime change or nation building. It was a one-size-fits-all approach of toppling regimes, trying to impose our system of governance on others, intervene in conflicts that were barely understood, and walk away with more enemies than allies. The results: trillions spent, countless lives lost, and in many cases, a creation of greater security threats. The rise of Islamist terrorist groups like ISIS. President Trump was elected by the American people to put an end to this. And from day one, he has showed a very different way to conduct foreign policy.
Showing a different way to conduct foreign policy. Well, considering we are in 2026, and the guy who got elected and sworn into office, who was going to end the wars, who was supposed to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours, that was a promise. I don't want to see dead people. I don't want to see any more dead people. It's still ongoing. Not only have we furthered that, we've furthered the genocide to the point of no return. And America just kidnapped the leader of Venezuela and is also pursuing regime change interests in Iran. So it seems like this difference between the neocons and Trump is non-existent. It almost seems like the neocons got to Trump. And either Trump was a phony all along who scammed every single voter, which is why a lot of the former Trump base is no longer respecting the Trump administration, no longer even voting, because they're just done with this BS. They're done with the Democrats and the Republicans lying to them, so there's not even a point to politics. And or Trump was blackmailed and manipulated, and being the lame duck president that he kind of is in the sense, is letting the neocons control everything. Just like how Joe Biden, had the mentality of oatmeal and left foreign interventions and foreign politics to neocons, to Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, who we knew are corrupted, we knew are war criminals. And now you have Marco Rubio and other informants that are also neocons and war criminals. So what difference is Trump making between himself being this charismatic populist, as Tulsi Gabbard is trying to sell this to you as, and the same neocons that Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Joe Biden, the Clintons, what difference? What difference does it make if Trump's in office or not? Clearly, it doesn't make any damn difference who's in office, which is kind of my philosophy. This whole entire point is that no matter who's in office, it's a corrupted system. It's a corrupted oligarchy. And you're not going to fix it with a brand new coat of paint. You're not going to fix it with a new guy walking in and thinking he's going to change things up. It's corroded within the inside out, meaning that the system has to be completely dismantled. The regime change mentality has to be completely dismantled, not by insiders, but by people like veterans, people who actually served in combat that know better, that know that this is complete bullcrap, that are calling out what's happening in Venezuela. They're calling out this garbage. The anti-war protesters that got silenced out, that are basically non-existent anymore because they got silenced out all the years. So this is Tulsi Gabbard on January 1st, New Year's Day, when, you know, there's still the genocide going on. There's tensions in Iran, Venezuela, and Tulsi Gabbard on New Year's Day tweeted this out saying, "My heart is filled with gratitude, aloha, and peace. Hashtag 2026. So it looks like a peaceful day. Looks like she's taking a self-care day or sabbatical, whatever you call it. As you have a bunch of neocons and bloodthirsty warmongers, as have got a bunch of criminals still roaming in office, playing to Trump's ear, demanding regime change wars that you used to call out. So, and we haven't seen much of Tulsi since. So it seems like that either Tulsi Gabbard was scamming us this whole time, or she got silenced out. That they're trying to push her away. And that may be why she got the position of Director of National Intelligence rather than the Secretary of State. Why they gave it to Marco Rubio. That may be the case, because you would think that Tulsi Gabbard, being a combat veteran and touring to all these different places. Remember, she went to Syria, talked to Mossad at the time. She talked to the leader of Syria to do a diplomatic investigation, and people freaked out. People said she was an Assad apologist. People called her a Russian asset. She called Hillary Clinton the queen of warmongers. So what's Tulsi Gabbard doing today? Nothing. She's just relaxing, having a self-care day, which, hey, I'm all for that. But you also got to deal with the fact that you've had a legacy of calling out regime change wars about this imperialistic force, about the war criminals, the neocons, the neoliberals that are detrimental to us, that are just completely on hell-bound on bloodthirst and just want to captivate on every other nation that they can get their grimy hands onto. You have to call that out. Because you doing this is torching your legacy. It's torching your reputation. It's torching the idea of why people were inspired by you, including me. Which is why when she sided with Joe Biden in 2020, she stepped down and sided with Joe Biden. It was hurtful. It was hurtful. It's like she stabbed us in the back. Then she goes on to Fox News to talk about jihadists. So that's kind of where this started. She was going down that path. She got infiltrated with the neocons. She got infiltrated with the people that she used to call out. Here's Kim Iverson pointing out the hypocrisy.
Well, let's now talk about one of the political disappointments of this era, Tulsi Gabbard. She built her entire brand on opposing regime change. Now she's part of the administration. She's cheering it on. This is what she wrote in a tweet. "Kudos to our servicemen and women and intelligence operators for this flawless execution of President Trump's order to deliver on his promise through Operation Absolute Resolve." Operation Absolute Resolve was the capture of Maduro, the regime change in Venezuela. Let's listen to what Tulsi used to say.
This administration and the neocon war hawks that surround President Trump have made no secret about what their intentions are to further this regime change effort, both in Venezuela as well as in Iran. President Trump is acting not with our interests in mind, not with the American people's interests in mind.
Here she is again.
When we look throughout history, every time the United States goes into another country and topples a dictator or topples a government, the outcome has been disastrous for the people in these countries. I can tell you as a soldier, Martha, I've seen firsthand firsthand the high cost of war.
Remember this one too?
The United States needs to keep our hands off Venezuela and let the Venezuelan people determine their own future. End these destructive and wasteful regime change wars that have proven so costly on us, the American people, on our troops and service members and their families. In Latin America especially, we only have to look to history to see what happens when the United States comes in and tries to act as the world's police.
Now look, I'm not going to blame her for...
You know, just seeing that, seeing how she presented herself with that, and the words and how she tried it, it's really insulting. Because all this demonstrates is that Tulsi Gabbard is not an incompetent politician. It's not like Tulsi Gabbard didn't know better. Not like she didn't know that, oh, regime change, well, I'm not so sure on the outcomes of it. I'm not sure about the circumstances of that. Oh, I don't really know about that because I'm so busy with this. She knew firsthand. She knew firsthand. She's a combat veteran. She knew, went on tour. She's done the studies. She has proven time and time over again. She's done countless appearances on podcasts, explaining to people. Back in the day, we listened to her and we admired her. We found it inspiring that someone was willing to call this out. So for her to go from that, knowing about the outcomes of regime change wars, the outcomes of imperialistic force on other countries, the outcomes of the military-industrial complex intervening in other countries, knowing all this, to then having a tweet saying kudos that you captured Maduro and falling into the trap of every damn neocon from Dick Cheney and the rest is insulting. It's insulting. I expect this from Marco Rubio. I expect this from deep state insiders within Washington. I expect this from most of Congress. I even expect this from Donald Trump. Because he said in 2016 that he wanted to go into Venezuela for the oil. We knew it was coming. But for Tulsi Gabbard, that is the most insulting. That is the stab in the back. And that's why this is so absolutely disgusting. That, she took personal days off. Obviously, they tried to sideline her, which we're going to get to an article about that they were purposely trying to push her out, even though she's the director of national intelligence. They pushed her out from the planning of the kidnapping of Maduro. They completely kicked her out. They completely silenced her. So if that's how you're going to be treated within the Trump administration, why are you still even in it? Like, clearly, Tulsi knows better. And yet, she's still complicit with the Trump administration. She gave kudos to them after all this. Which, frankly, that makes you a traitor. That makes you a traitor. Because you're smart enough to understand why you doing this is such a just disregard to anyone who looked up to you, anyone who was inspired by you, anyone who voted for you. Just like, same with Bernie Sanders, same with AOC. Do you see how all these people are just riled up to fail? You see why you're not going to change the system internally? And why this is all external, why the system is so corroded that it takes us to save it, not them, us. That electorally doesn't do a damn difference. You can vote whoever you want. It doesn't change a damn thing. Because your country is controlled. Your country is an oligarchy. You don't have democracy. You don't have representative, you don't have a representative republic. You live in an oligarchy. Anyway, let's see.
Joining the Trump administration. I think he sold her what she wanted to hear and what many of her backers and her supporters believed in, which was he was against regime change. That's what we all heard from him.
We must abandon the failed policy of nation building and regime change.
That's what he sold to all of us. But it turns out it was a lie. People are just going to stop voting because what's the point of voting? We don't live in a democracy. We don't have any say. The American people were loud and clear with the referendum when they voted Donald Trump in what they wanted, and we've got none of it. None of it.
Exactly. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. And even with a guy like Trump, who they, tried every tactic from unlawfare to potential assassinations, they obviously got to him. They got to Tulsi. They got to all these people. Now you understand that electoral politics doesn't mean crap. You don't live in a democracy. You live in an oligarchy. You have rulers, you have owners, and they own all of you. You're just the sheep. You're just cattle. You don't make a damn difference. And that's why I find it all hilarious when all these, leaders and politicians and even influencers and celebrities are, talking about Iran. You gotta save the Iranian people. You don't give a crap about people in general. You never gave about people within your own country. You sold out farmers. You sold out individuals and their rights when it came to COVID. You sold out people when they wanted to vote for Trump the first time. You said that they're a bunch of deplorables. So why the hell should I believe that you give a damn about anybody? Why should I believe that? So here's what is interesting, though, and this is kind of the breaking story behind this. Top U.S. intelligence officer Tulsi Gabbard was excluded from Venezuela plans just before the mission. She was on the beach in Hawaii, unaware of the details. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. But here's Times of India, because I went to them because they don't have a paywall. Says DNI equals do not invite. Tulsi Gabbard was excluded from Venezuela operation planning. Here's why. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was reportedly excluded from key planning meetings for the operation to oust Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro because of her past opposition to military action in the country. Her previous stance cast doubt on her willingness to support the operation, reports Bloomberg. So if you knew about this with Tulsi Gabbard, this is the thing that's so crazy. If you knew that Tulsi Gabbard was conflicting when it comes to Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and even Donald Trump doing these regime change wars, why would you have her on at all in your administration? Oh, that's right, because you want to dupe your base. You want to dupe your base. You thought that bringing Tulsi Gabbard on was going to convince enough people that, no, we're not doing regime change. And that's what they're saying right now. No, this is not a war in Venezuela. What are you talking about? We're just throwing bombs. You just stole the president and leader of the country, and we're treating the Venezuelans like hell. But no, this is not a war. The exclusion became so well known among the White House staff that some aides joked the acronym of her title, DNI, stood for Do Not Invite. A White House official denied the joke ever occurred. A Democratic congresswoman in 2019, Democratic congresswoman in 2019, Gabbard argued that the U.S. should stay out of Venezuela, and last month she criticized warmongers pushing the country into conflict with the Latin American country. Her views on regime change were opposite to that of President Trump's harsh foreign policy approach. Vice President J.D. Vance dismissed claims that he or Gabbard were left out of the planning as false. White House Communications Director Stephen Jen added that Trump was full confidence in DNI Gabbard, as she is doing a fantastic job. Vance said that the operation was tightly controlled at the senior cabinet level to maintain secrecy. A senior intelligence official said that Gabbard still provided analytic intelligence for the mission, even if she was not directly involved in the operational planning. So, even though she was excluded from the planning, she knew that this was going on. She knew this was still going on. She still got papers. She still got documents confirming that there was planning. And yet, she's still tweeting that that's a great idea. Kudos to them. Kudos to them. Oh, I'm taking a peace day. So it sounds like to me, Tulsi Gabbard really became a traitor. She sold out. Either someone got to her or we finally saw the true colors in her. Which could be both column A and column B. Because it seemed like Gabbard, over the years, when you really look down to it, she didn't really have a firm stance on certain principles. She said one thing, but did she really stand for it? Just like Bernie Sanders, like AOC. You see why these people go into politics. You see why. If they actually cared about serving the community, they cared about helping people, you wouldn't go into a position like this. You would be a volunteer. You'd be an EMT. You'd be working for a hospital as a nurse. Any job out there would be a better response to the community than this. This is where you want to go when you want to be a narcissistic maniac that wants power. That's power hungry. President Trump promised the American people he would secure our borders, confront narco-terrorism, dangerous drug cartels, and drug traffickers, Gabbard wrote in a social media post. The message marked her first public comment since the other top officials celebrated the operation. Photos released by the White House showed Trump with key aides, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller in a war room during the operation. Gabbard was not among them. Retired U.S. Air Force Intelligence Colonel Cedric Layton said that it was unusual for DNI not to be involved in any of these operations, especially something like Venezuela. Gabbard has been occasionally sidelined, but she continues to brief the president and attend Oval Office meetings. The senior intelligence official claimed it was unfair to focus on her past views, as other senior officials like Vance also had policy disagreements with Trump in the past. Yes, they all lied to you. All of them. Every single one of these turds lied to you. That's why they were able to win against Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, I doubt would have been this rash when it came to, taking over Venezuela, but she would have done the same operations. Because that is how corroded the system is. Doesn't matter who's in the office. Doesn't matter. You can get a bumbling jerk-ass game show host to become the president. It's not going to change a damn thing. Gabbard is a veteran of the Iraq War and long opposed U.S. involvement in regime change wars. She said in 2019 that we don't want other countries to choose our leaders, so we have to stop choosing theirs. In a recent speech, she criticized decades of U.S. foreign policy as trapped in a counterproductive, endless cycle of regime change or nation building. The social media post in 2019 said the United States needs to stay out of Venezuela, let the Venezuelan determine. We already read. So, there you go. Tulsi Gabbard. I guess the T stands for traitor. Or whatever the case may be. But clearly, she's not sticking to her most, notable value, her legacy. The reason why people support her. The reason why people even knew about her. I didn't know about her until she made those speeches. That's why I got support. That's why I found it interesting as a Canadian. Because not even Canadian politicians would say the stuff that she was saying. But now, here she is, just cheering on the regime change wars, cheering on the neocons. And even though that she's using the excuse of being sidelined, he still had the information, still knew it was happening. And a lot of these people, I mean, other than Marco Rubio was set in stone, a neo-thug. Like, that was already predetermined. But all these people who said they were going to change things up, we're going to stop the ways of the old, we're going to stop globalism. Remember that? We're going to stop globalism. We're going to stop the deep state. Never going to happen. It's never going to happen because the system is deeply corroded, and whoever gets in office like this is going to be captured. They're going to be blackmailed. They're going to be deceived. They're going to be epitomized. I mean, look at what they did to Thomas Massey. Look at what they did to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Two individuals that their only big crime was talking about American, domestic issues, talking about the Epstein files. That's their biggest crime, and they're being most severely punished out of all the people within the criminal organization known as the U.S. White House. Think about that.